Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. Changing lives one bicycle at a time. That's the tagline of this charity that I discovered about 5 months ago, the Africa Bike Project. It's special to me for a number of reasons, but one of them is because it's a locally made charity here in Alberta, actually Calgary. The two principals that started it and are running it today, two young ladies, Melissa and Kelly, they're at the heart of this charity. Mr. Toastmaster, charitable Toastmasters, and avid cyclists and lovers of biking on the internet, the Africa Bike Project. I met Melissa and Kelly discreetly one night while reading my local newspaper. They're on the front page with their glowing faces, holding a bike, a picture of a bike, the Africa bicycle. I started reading the article. I read it, I don't know how many times, 3 or 4 times. I was intrigued. I liked it. I went to their website. I read the website over and over. I contacted them and asked them, would you like to do an interview for me to tell me more about your Africa Bike Project? They graciously agreed. And about 6 weeks ago, we met at a downtown coffee shop on a Saturday afternoon, and for 20 minutes, we did a good interview where I asked them all the questions about their charity. It's actually going to be on my podcast site here as I point to the right-hand side. It's podcast number 26, Entrepreneurship, the Africa Bike Project. Now, the other reason it's special to me is because about 1.5 years ago in Regina, I presented a 35-minute educational on entrepreneurship. And what entrepreneurship is an organization that a person starts to create social change and for their own personal growth. There's no mention of making money as an entrepreneur does. Sorry, an entrepreneur. We had a good interview, and they told me about their story. Both Kelly and Melissa grew up here in Alberta, and up until 2 years ago, they didn't know each other. They met while they were on a humanitarian flight to Kenya for another local organization, A Better Canada, A Better World Canada. They met, and while in Kenya for 1 month doing humanitarian work, they connected. While there, they were working at a school, cleaning up the school, painting it, getting it ready for the students, the Caprigne Primary School in Kericho, Kenya. They also spent some time at an orphanage, playing with kids and dispensing health products with them. Now, while they were there, they were told some rather interesting stories of how these 500 and plus students at the school, what their daily routines are like. Some of the students have to walk 20 kilometers one way to school. That means they have about a 2-hour lunch break so that most of them can walk home for lunch, walk back to school. Now, this would make the school quitting time about 5 in the afternoon. Some of the teachers said that they spent many a night sleeping overnight at school because by the time they did their school prep work, it was too late to go home. It was dark and it wasn't safe. The local wildlife. There was also stories about kids that cannot take that much time to go to school because of the walking distance, and they would drop out, so their education would be incomplete. So when Kelly and Melissa came back to Calgary on their flight, they connected and they stayed in touch, and they started to brainstorm, and they said, what could we do to increase the quality of life and education for these kids? And they came up with this bike project. They contacted Kona Mountain Bikes, which is a very popular name. It's 50% owned in Canada, 50% in the US. And Kona got on board right away because Kona already had a mountain bike that was designed for the African terrain. All they did is take it, modify it, so that a young teen could ride it. Kids from 8 years of age to perhaps 13 years of age. And they called it the African. Kona's their major sponsor. And Kona pledged to them that for every 2 bikes that they raise money for and buy from Kona, Kona will match them 1. Now, each bike costs about $130 Canadian, subsidized by Kona. So, of course, when I saw the ad a few months ago, I couldn't help being value-oriented. I couldn't help but going after that 3rd free bike, so I gave accordingly. They also have a couple of other big name sponsors behind them. And last September, they had their first mountain bike race in Canmore. That was their main fundraising event. And they plan to have one again in September. It's an interesting charity because it's homegrown, it's here in Alberta, and as well, it's something that they can do. Now, what they're planning of doing is providing each one of the students at that Capregne Primary School in Kenya one bike that they keep like their own until they graduate from the school. On the weekends, they even take it home, and their siblings and parents could even use it. So they could go run their errands and go collect food and bring water. When they graduate from the school, they turn the bike back to the school reassigns it to another student, like a pool. Teachers and staff will also get a bike they can use as their own. So that's a total of 580 bikes, which makes the profit target for the charity about $50,000. And they're hoping to raise enough to send these 580 bikes over to Kenya by the end of next year. So it's an exciting project. I had to interview them and get their full story. Every penny that's raised goes directly to the charity. Even the website that was designed by Boland Graphics of Red Deer, Brandon Boland, the webmaster, that was donated as well. So it's an interesting project. There's a donate button on the website, so anyone on the internet, and myself, being such an avid lover of bicycles, I just couldn't help but seeing what a neat story that is. It's local, it's focused, and it's directed at that one specific goal and project. The Africa Bike Project, changing lives, one bike at a time. Mr. Toastmaster.